Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
I'm Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Network. Here at the Roger Stone Show, we eat, sleep, and breathe politics. It's because I'm a veteran of 13 national Republican presidential campaigns, from Nixon to Donald J. Trump. I spent 45 years in the corroded rectum of the two-party system. I guess you could say, well, I've seen it all. But I give it to you straight. I criticize Republicans and independents, call them as I see them. I'm a big fan of the Donald Trump-Robert Kennedy alliance. I really think this is the beginning of a new realignment in American politics. Where you have Dick Cheney, the former vice president. You remember him. He started the war in Iraq over the false claim that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, that they had acquired yellow cake uranium in order to develop nuclear weapons. And while they had some involvement in 9/11, all of which, of course, was untrue. The value of Vice President Cheney's Halliburton stock, because he had formerly been the president of the Halliburton Corporation, soared. But his critics point out that his Halliburton stock was in his blind trust. Well, how blind is his trust if he knows it's in there? In any event, I was very saddened to see Ethel Kennedy pass this week at age 96. She's, of course, the widow of Senator Robert Kennedy of New York, the slain presidential candidate, the mother of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I actually met her once. She came from a big old money Greenwich Republican family, Ethel Skakel Kennedy. I met her in White Plains, New York, at a rally. See, I was that odd kid. In 1964, I was 12 years old, but I was for Goldwater for president. I was for Bobby Kennedy for the Senate. That's because the Republican candidate, Ken Keating, was a liberal Republican who had opposed the nomination of my hero, Barry Goldwater. Was also attracted by Senator Robert Kennedy's ardent anti-communism. She looked at me and the fact that I was wearing a Goldwater and Kennedy button as we went through this like receiving line where she was shaking hands. And she said, well, I don't care if you're for Goldwater as long as you're for Goldwater as long as you're for Kennedy. She was a lady with grit and energy, and the grace with which she bore her widowhood after the murder of her husband in Los Angeles, on the cusp of his greatest political triumph. He had just won the California Democrat primary for the presidency when he was killed. A great lady has passed. May she rest in peace. Virtually every poll now putting Donald Trump slightly ahead of his opponent, Kamala Harris. It is hard to believe that the race is this close, candidly. But I think it's because of the mainstream media distortions. Go on Google and just do a Google News search on Donald Trump. It will blow your mind. There's not a single positive or even neutral story. I've seen people on X, formerly known as Twitter, this week say that they now use Twitter as their best source for information. They don't even bother doing a Google search anymore. And then, of course, this week, fabled former Washington Post reporter Bob Woodward, who claims that President Donald Trump has spoken to the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, multiple times since leaving the presidency, and that Trump even sent Putin a COVID-19 test. All of this, of course, stoutly denied by the Kremlin and the former president. Here's the sad truth. Bob Woodward needs a lot more scrutiny because his entire career is based on a series of lies. Lies about Watergate, lies about Iran-Contra, lies about the war in Iraq, and, well, even lies about the late comic genius John Belushi. Bob Woodward's biggest lie is that he never met White House Chief of Staff Alexander Haig until 1973. He, of course, Woodward was one of the two reporters who broke the Watergate story. But this claim that he didn't know Haig, Nixon's White House Chief of Staff, is false. We now know that Woodward, as a member of Naval Intelligence, was actually briefing Haig in the White House in 1969. If Bob Woodward's big lie about Haig had been exposed, then the synergistic myth of Bob Woodward's second biggest lie about Deep Throat would have been completely shattered. By the way, Woodward claims that the identity of Deep Throat is Mark Felt, who was then the number 3 man in the FBI. That's actually not possible. USA Today reporter Ray Locker destroys the myth of Felt being Deep Throat in his mostly overlooked book, Haig's Coup. But it is fairly clear that by the time Bob Woodward identified Mark Felt as Deep Throat, Felt had suffered a stroke, was incapable of speaking, was deeply in debt. And, well, a lot of journalists were beginning to add things up, recognizing that Deep Throat's never mentioned once in the Washington Post reporting on Watergate. He only appears in All the President's Men. From his graduation at Yale, where he claims he was against the war in Vietnam, but his then fiancée said no. To the contrary, he was a cheerleader for the war. He went to his ROTC scholarship training. That required a 6-year hitch in the Navy. So he was in the Navy, assigned to the USS Wright, which was an aircraft carrier that had been transformed into a high seas, high-tech command post. That ship's state-of-the-art communications received top communiques. Then Bob Woodward had a top-secret crypto clearance. He denies being in naval intelligence, by the way. He goes on, of course, to fabricate everything from Richard Nixon talking to the oil portraits of the presidents on the walls late at night. Who could have witnessed that? Who would be the source of it? Unless, of course, Al Haig made it up. But perhaps his greatest sin in this area, Mr. Woodward, is the ignoring of the fact that there was a Pentagon-run spy ring inside the White House that was spying on Richard Nixon. That's because they didn't trust his opening of the door to China, didn't want a SALT agreement, a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Russians, and they certainly didn't want to end the war in Vietnam. But even though it has been established that a naval yeoman named Radford, who was in the White House liaison office for the Pentagon, was stealing documents and sending them to Admiral Thomas Moorer, who was then the head of the chief of staff of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. None of that reported by Bob Woodward. Not the first time Woodward lies, but on the other side, we're going to examine the rest of Mr. Woodward's career, because if this guy was Pinocchio, his nose would be as long as the Washington Monument or the Empire State Building. I'm Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
This is The Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back on the Red Apple Audio Network. Grab your cell phone, go to the App Store, and download the Red Apple app so that you don't miss any of the amazing programming we bring you. We're talking about Bob Woodward, who is this legendary reporter who seems to have a legendary trail of lies behind him, including his affiliation with the Central Intelligence Agency. Interestingly enough, Mr. Woodward first went to work at the Washington Post, and then he was fired when he couldn't even turn in decent copy. He was there on a contingent basis, and he left after 2 months. Then suddenly goes to the Montgomery Sentinel newspaper, which is kind of a sleepy backwater, after which he suddenly returns to the Washington Post and has all these amazing scoops about Watergate. His biggest scoop, the existence of the taping system, which clearly is leaked to him by Al Haig, the president's White House chief of staff. Hey, it's interesting. Woodward himself had been asked to join the Senate Watergate Committee as an investigator. He had declined, but recommended his longtime best friend, Scott Armstrong. So Haig was the one who told Armstrong about the existence of the Watergate taping system that would take Nixon down. But Al Haig declined to tell Richard Nixon, who was then hospitalized with pneumonia, that the system had been discovered and was likely to be the subject of the Senate Watergate hearings on a Monday. You see, if he had told Nixon, Nixon would have had time to file an injunction under the concept of executive privilege to prevent that from coming public. Woodward lies, of course, about Mark Felt, particularly lies about this entire contrived idea that Woodward would move a flower pot in front of his apartment on P Street in D.C. It was actually on a balcony, but the balcony in question, if you go look, doesn't actually face the street, but rather an interior courtyard. So even if Mark Felt was, as in their book, All the President's Men, driving into D.C., parking his car to scrutinize Woodward's balcony, it's impossible for him to know about the flower pot because it cannot be seen from the street. Just another example of the lies of Bob Woodward. Probably the most egregious one is in 1987, Bob Woodward claimed that he had spoken to former director of the CIA, Bill Casey, a great New Yorker. This was before the publication of Woodward's book, Veil, The Secret Wars of the CIA. Woodward claimed that he had slipped into Casey's hospital room, where Casey gave a full confession of his role in paying arms and weapons for hostages in the Iran-Contra affair. The problem with that, of course, is that, well, by that time, Bill Casey had been debilitated by a brain tumor, and according to both his wife and his son, both of whom I interviewed for my book on Watergate, he no longer had the capacity of speech. Interestingly, also, Kevin Shipp, the former CIA agent in charge of the security detail outside of Casey's room, insisted that the room was guarded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that there is no record of Mr. Woodward having entered the room. So yet another lie by Bob Woodward. He also slimed John Belushi. He did a celebrated biography of the late comedian called Wired, The Short Life and Fast Times of John Belushi. That book really hit the fan when Belushi's widow, who had cooperated but who never seemed to be able to get a copy of the manuscript from Woodward before it was published, she said it wasn't a fair portrait of John. There was no joy in the book, no balance. He was a lovable person. He had a terrific presence. Woodward not only missed all of that, but it was all about drugs and madness, and it wasn't even accurate. It is going to be a great show, folks. Coming up, Anthony Constantino, this poor guy, revitalized the upstate town of Amsterdam, New York. The country's policies had made what was once a vibrant manufacturing town a ghost town. But Anthony Constantino started a print company, which became one of the largest on the internet, bought the Foundry building there. His company, by the way, is Sticker Mule. But he put a giant sign on top of his company's factory that says, "Vote for Trump." That was the beginning of big trouble for Anthony Constantino. He was charged with a demand that he take the sign down or that he face jail. He will be joining us here. Just another example of the bureaucrats in the town of Amsterdam, New York, having Trump derangement syndrome. We're going to break it down with Anthony Constantino, and then Barry Habib, perhaps the country's leading expert on mortgages and housing and a shrewd economic analyst, is going to join us to tell us why the latest jobs numbers from the Harris-Biden administration are bunk. We'll be right back.
Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. This is the Roger Stone Show. Joining us now, Anthony Constantino. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Sticker Mule, which is one of the most successful internet-based printing companies, which he has grown to a company of 1,200 employees in 39 countries, with his base in Amsterdam, New York. Now, Amsterdam, New York was once a thriving manufacturing city, but the globalist trade policies of multiple administrations turned it into a ghost town. Then our friend Anthony was able to purchase the Founder Building, one of the biggest buildings in town. Anthony, welcome to the Roger Stone Show. I'm let you pick up the story from there.
Thanks, Roger. Honored to be here and honored to be talking to you and letting all your listeners hear the story. It's a interesting story. I didn't expect myself to be in this situation, but really ever since a bullet hit President Trump back in July, I've been trying to do everything I can to stop the anti-Trump hate situation that's been driving everyone nuts for the last 8 years. And I thought the best way to stop it is just show people in a respectful way that I support President Trump and encourage other people to speak up, because far too many people with great backgrounds and respected people stay quiet, and it makes it easy to define the Trump voter in a not so nice way. So I decided to put this sign on top of my building, and I moved very quickly. I had a team of artists design a beautiful sign. We put it on top of the building, and next thing I knew, all sorts of enthusiasm was building to see the sign. We did a party on last Monday. I'm losing track. We did a party last Monday, and the outpouring of excitement and enthusiasm for the sign went through the roof. People wanted to come from all over the country to see it. People wanted to drive in from all sorts of neighboring cities to see it. And as soon as my local Democrat mayor got word of the sign, he started hearing about the enthusiasm and the excitement. He hit me with a restraining order preventing me from showing the sign. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was told that if I displayed the sign, I was going to end up in jail because you can't violate a restraining order. And so I had to get really good lawyers. I had to get a criminal lawyer to advise me of my personal criminal risks and whatnot. And we went forward with the event. I had 3,000 plus people show up. I saw a front hand. I was just telling you how dishonest the media is. Somebody said a few hundred people showed up, but my friend runs an MMA promotion with 2,000 plus people, and we had 3,000 people show up. It was an incredible event. And just minutes before the event started, I got word from my lawyer that the judge agreed with us. The mayor was wrong, and the judge vacated the restraining order and let me go forward with the event and light the sign. So it ended up being a big success, really, for Democrats and Republicans alike in upstate New York, because now we got a sort of national landmark in Amsterdam, New York, which is a small town that not a lot of people know about. But I guess it seems the whole country knows a little bit more about it now, and President Trump knows about it too, because he wrote a nice thank you on True Social.
I'm looking at the complaint from the city of Amsterdam, which is, of course, a public record. You are charged with having a political sign that is 100 square feet in gross surface, which has been installed on the roof of your building, and that is in violation of the fact that you did not have a permit. The newly constructed sign, they say, exceeds the maximum height in the light industrial zone for signs. You also are charged with saying that the newly constructed sign does not advertise a product or a service, and therefore it's not principally available on the premises. But my favorite complaint was your sign was so big and so cool and so well lit. Well, it was a hazard for drivers who might be driving by and see it. You got to be kidding me with this stuff.
No, I told people very simply, I just said, look, people like beautiful signs, and they know how to drive cars. I mean, it's really a silly thing that the mayor thought, he could make an argument that people don't know how to drive cars. It's a good thing this guy's not the mayor of Las Vegas, or he'd have to shut the whole city down.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. The outpouring of support for you has really been heartening, because this is at heart a free speech issue. I mean, on this show just recently, we played audio of Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton insisting that, we need to restrict free speech. We can't allow this misinformation, particularly on the internet. Well, who is to say what misinformation is? I mean, Hillary Clinton destroyed 30,000 emails with a hammer and bleach bit. She knew they were under subpoena. But if I say that and somebody disagrees with it, oh, you're guilty of misinformation. It's we're moving into very, very strange times. I see President Trump announced that he's going to Madison Square Garden for the mother of all rallies. That's October 27th, certain to be a sellout. And a friend right near you, Anthony, tells me that Kamala Harris is spending money on cable advertising in deep blue New York. What's going on here? Is Donald Trump on the move in New York State?
It seems like it could be. I'm one of these people that likes to believe anything is possible, similar to President Trump. You know, everybody said you can't become president if you got no prior political experience, and he pulled that off. So people say President Trump can't win New York. Maybe that's gonna happen too. But I'm one of these people that thinks anything's possible, and it seems like October 27th might be another historic day in American history. It's an exciting thing that he's coming to Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I think people also have to recognize that the spillover to New Jersey, to eastern Pennsylvania, and obviously to Connecticut. Now, I don't think Connecticut, my native state, is in play. I was born at the Norwalk Hospital, grew up there in Fairfield County. So my cousins are all listening to the show today. I can assure you of that. But it has multiple political applications. I think it's really quite brilliant. Plus, my guess is that he will sell out the garden. It seems also to me like Joe Biden continues to resent the fact that he was pushed out by Kamala Harris and Barack Obama. He was very quick to rush to the White House press room to announce the settlement of the longshoremen's strike, when he knew on the other end of the country, Michigan, I believe, that Kamala Harris was preparing to take the stage and do exactly that. So it is amazing that he seems to have Kamala Harris, I would say, in his death grip. Here's a cut, RS2 actually, of Joe Biden.
Be herself. Look, she is smart as hell, number one. Yeah. She's tough. She was a first-rate prosecutor. She is a United States Senator of significant consequence. And as vice president, there wasn't a single thing that I did that she couldn't do. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to delegate her responsibility on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy. Look, the one thing we have in common, she and I, two basic things that are different, departed from some Democrats, some past Democratic notions. We thought the way to build this country and build the economy, which was left in tatters, was to build a middle class.
Boy, that guy's so full of it, his eyes are brown. But you can hear him with the death grip of... No, she was in on everything. One of the most unpopular presidents in our history. And then, for reasons I don't really understand, Kamala Harris, whose campaign has been trying to put distance, Anthony, between herself and Joe Biden, she steps right into it. Listen to this.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Wow. I'm not sure I would have said that if I were her, but they're really now having to roll out Barack Obama himself. I mean, Barack Obama being the star attraction in the Democrat Party. And then he says, to quote the New York Post, that black male voters are not buying Kamala. He says that the brothers are not into her. So I'm not surprised. They're seeing the same thing that we are seeing. If you look at the polls, I've said here on the show before, Anthony, you can't look at any one poll. You got to look at multiple polls taken within the same time period using solid methodology. You know that this is a skin-tight race. I want to commend you, Anthony, for your courage. I know there were some dark moments there where the judge was, or the mayor was insisting that you be thrown in jail for having a Donald Trump sign on top of your building. Tell us quickly about Sticker Mule, because this is a success story that people need to hear.
Yeah, we're the, I call it the internet's hottest printing company, fastest growing printing company. I'm the sole owner, which is why I get a little bit more freedom than other people to go out and do what I think makes sense for the world. And I really built the company just trying to solve problems. I solved the problem making it easy to buy online printing. I like solving problems. I don't particularly focus on making money. All the best CEOs seem to operate that way. Elon, I don't think, spends a lot of time thinking about making money. He thinks about sending rockets to Mars and building. You see the robot he built yesterday? That was pretty cool. And Steve Jobs, I don't think, did the same thing either. So we got a great company. We're in 1,200 people in 39 countries. And I like solving problems. People say, why'd you get involved in this whole situation? And this is a big problem that needs to get solved, or else we're going to end up in a country that nobody wants to live in.
All right. Thank you to Anthony Constantino. Folks, don't go away. Barry Habib, perhaps the country's leading expert on mortgages and housing and a shrewd economic analyst, is going to be right along to tell us why the latest jobs numbers put out by the Harris-Biden administration are bunk. We'll be right back.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Roger Stone.
With the current administration pushing for digital currency in which you wouldn't even control your own money, and with the wild spending of printing press money, now is the time to protect yourself by diversifying your retirement nest egg by acquiring precious metals like gold and silver. Colonial Metals Group is the one company I trust to do exactly that. You can even convert your IRA. So protect yourself today. Reach out to them at colonialmetalsgroup.com or call 800-747-6589. That's 800-747-6589. You might even be eligible for $2,500 worth of free silver. So call them today.
This is the Roger Stone Show. This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. I'm Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. Joining us now, Barry Habib. He is the Chief Executive Officer of MBS Highway, but more importantly, he is, I think, one of the country's leading experts on mortgages and housing, as well as a very shrewd economic analyst. In fact, I can honestly say everything Barry Habib has ever predicted to me has come to pass. Author also of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, Money in the Streets. Barry Habib and I believe his son join us now to talk about the Biden-Harris administration's latest job numbers. Barry, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
It's always a pleasure to be with you. Yeah, and I brought my secret weapon. Dan is absolutely brilliant, and we collaborate on breaking down a lot of the data. So thanks for being with me on this, Dan. So
lay it on us, my brother.
Okay, so we did get the jobs report, which was a very, on the appearance, a very strong job number. So the market was looking for 254,000 jobs to be created. And I'm sorry, 150,000. And we got 254,000. That seemed like, wow, that was really good. And then the unemployment rate miraculously dropped from 4.2% to 4.1%. Is everything so great in the marketplace? Well, that's why we have to dig deeper, because when we analyze this, we say this just doesn't jive with what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of layoffs in manufacturing. We're seeing a lot of slowness. We're seeing much more increase in the amount of planned layoffs. We're seeing that when we see job postings, they're decreasing. So it was truly, for Dan and myself, it was a head scratcher. And what we really needed to do is, as we do with every report, just dig deep into the numbers. Now, there's two reports. One is the household survey, where you get the unemployment rate, and the other is where you get the business survey. And this has been very flawed. Remember, Roger, we talked about this just not too long ago. We mentioned that these numbers didn't seem right. And sure enough, 40% of the jobs that they said were created last year never really happened. They were phantoms. So they kind of went back and said, oops, we made a mistake here. So look, don't want to beat up too bad on the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, because it's a Herculean effort to do this every month, and they do a lot of modeling, which can be flawed, but the markets trade on this. And this is a really critical report, because this is essentially right before people are going to go to the voting booth, and they'd like to see what the economy looks like. So this, on its surface, appears to be quite the strong jobs report. Well, it also helps the stock market. And the stock market has done very well, thinking the economy is good. And that's psychological for a lot of people, saying, hey, the stock market's doing good. I feel good. Now, digging deeper on the numbers. The household survey, where you get the unemployment report, they also say how many jobs are created. And wow, Dan, you know the number. I think it was 414,000, yes?
430,000 was the adjusted number. And you know, something that's always very important with these reports is something called seasonal adjustments. And that's where the BLS...
Before we do, I want to talk about where those jobs came from. Of those 430,000 jobs, Roger, you had 231,000 of them. Of the 430, 231 were 16 to 19-year-olds. I just wanted to point that out. So those 16 to 19-year-olds, these are not your high-income earners. And by the way, do you not think it's a bit odd that in September, where this report is for, most of those kids go back to school? Are they all dropping out and working at McDonald's? This is crazy that you would see such an enormous increase here. And perhaps some of it, Dan, I just wanted to preface it, is what you're about to talk about with the seasonal adjustments.
Yeah, so the BLS seasonally adjusts the numbers to smooth it out and to really give you the true story if we're seeing strong or weak job creations, because it makes perfect sense if you think about it, where, hey, in the fall, you have teachers go back to school, and they try to remove that seasonal hiring because, hey, is this really a strong September, or is this just naturally what we see as teachers go back to work? So they always take
and by the way, Dan, conversely, in June, when the teachers go away, or other seasonal employees, we're just using this as an example, it's not that the economy is so bad that we lost all these jobs. This happens every June. They kind of go away. They stop their employment at that point in time and then go back in the fall. So like Dan said, it smooths out so you don't think the economy is on this roller coaster. These are normal things that happen seasonally, and that's why the seasonal adjustments make sense to use.
Right. And the seasonal adjustment in this report was the most generous that we've seen in about 48 years. What that means is that historically you see around a 75, 79% downward seasonal adjustment to account for those teachers going back to work. In this report, it was only a 38% seasonal adjustment. So it doesn't jive with anything we've seen historically and had a huge impact on the job creations number. And, of course, that impacts the unemployment rate.
All right, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. I appreciate Barry and Dan Habib jumping in to tell us why the latest job numbers from the Harris-Biden administration, as I like to call it, are bunk, politically manipulated for the next election. Guys, thanks for joining us. Up next, Gordon Chang, who is an American lawyer, author, and political commentator, widely recognized on an expert on China and U.S.-China relations. So you're not going to want to miss that. Stick with us here on The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back, folks. Joining me now, Gordon Chang, who is a lawyer, author, and political commentator, very widely recognized in the country for his analysis on the situation in China and U.S.-China relations. I saw him the other day on Real America's Voice. It was a tour de force, and I'm delighted that he could join us today on the Roger Stone Show. Gordon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Roger. I really appreciate it.
You wrote a book in 2001 entitled The Coming Collapse of China. You make a very cogent argument that China's political and economic systems eventually would have to lead to its downfall. Although you predicted the collapse has not happened yet, it's still many who believe that you are right, that in the end their system cannot sustain itself. What I want to focus on really is the state of current U.S.-Chinese relations, how it is today, and how you would contrast that with our relations with the Chinese under President Donald Trump.
Well, right now, the Biden administration has done a number of things to help the Communist Party through a very difficult period. And that was certainly not the case under President Trump, because President Trump broke 5 decades of engagement policy. Under our engagement policy, we thought it was in our interest to support the Communist Party of China. Trump said, no, our interest is to support the American people. Unfortunately, Biden has sort of gone back to that engagement theory, which has proven not to have been in our benefit at all. So as a thumbnail sketch, that's where we are with regard to Beijing. Beijing, by the way, I predicted the failure of the Communist Party a lot earlier. 2008 got in the way, which gave the regime some strength. But China right now is having its 2008, and I'm afraid the Biden people are trying to save China from what I believe is its fate.
I saw someplace that you had predicted that you thought that Chairman Xi would relatively soon step down. Then I read elsewhere that, well, yes, but he would be going over to run the military. What is the status of that in your view?
I think Xi Jinping is having problems right now inside the Chinese political system. He inherited a consensual system where no leader got too much credit or too much blame because decisions were shared across the board. But he took power from everybody, which means he ended up with total accountability. And right now, when China's falling apart, people are blaming him, and they should be, because his policies are leading China in the wrong direction. And so we're seeing signs of instability. I'm sure that Xi Jinping is very worried about it, and I think that he is reacting largely or even solely to domestic political pressures, which is the reason why China's become much more aggressive and hostile in recent months.
So let's turn now to the vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz. I was really pretty shocked. Many trips to China, as many as 30 trips to China, 33 I think it is. His time teaching in a university there, and of course in China the party runs everything, including the universities. But that this didn't come up. This to me raises serious questions about his involvement with the CCP. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, he's got very suspicious ties to the Communist Party's United Front Work Department, which is the part of the party that subverts foreign government. When Walz was taking students to China at the end of the 1990s and in the decade that followed, that exercise had to have been approved by the United Front Work Department. Now, Tim Walz can't say that he was young and stupid and a knucklehead then, because we know that as governor of Minnesota, and this is from Daily Caller reporting, he has had extensive contacts with front organizations of the Communist Party in Minnesota. So his contacts with the party have been throughout this century. And I believe that he needs to explain this to the American people. I personally think that he can explain away one or two facts, but he can't explain away the pattern. And we cannot afford to have a communist sympathizer, or worse, one heartbeat away from the Oval Office.
It is amazing to me that this goes unexamined. So it's not just that he taught at the university, but he began bringing groups of students into China to essentially be indoctrinated. Who paid for all of this? That's my first question.
Well, he had a private company which was supposed to be making a profit, Educational Travel Adventures. But I don't think that he was making a profit. I suspect that the Communist Party was funding this either one way or another. I don't know that, but this is one of the questions that Tim Walz needs to explain to the American people. Where did he get the money to do this? Because it's clear that he was not making sufficient amount of money to support that activity. And that activity, as you point out, Roger, is absolutely right. He was bringing students to be indoctrinated by Communist Party propaganda.
The question of whether China will move on Taiwan, they're always saber rattling. I think it was unthinkable under President Donald Trump. He evidently made it pretty clear to Chairman Xi that that was unacceptable. But I have to believe the Chinese, watching the situation in Afghanistan, watching us unfreeze $190+ billion of assets for Iran. Thus, the Chinese can now buy the oil from Iran that they so very much need. They weren't able to do so because of the harsh economic sanctions put on Iran by Donald Trump. They have to be emboldened by what they see as weakness, no?
Absolutely. We know that as Afghanistan was falling, we could see Communist Party propaganda was making exactly that point. They were saying that the United States was not capable. They were saying, for instance, among other things, that when China invades Taiwan, that the United States won't come to help, and they were saying that because of the failure in Afghanistan. And also we know, Roger, that soon after the fall of Afghanistan, you have Vladimir Putin thinking he can take Ukraine. You have China and Russia fielding insurgencies in North Africa that look like wars. And, of course, China supporting Iran's attack on Israel on October 7th. You talk about oil, and this is instructive. Last year, China's purchases of Iranian oil was about 60% above that in 2017. 2017 is relevant because that was the last year before the Trump administration reimposed sanctions on the purchase of Iranian oil. And we know the Biden administration hasn't enforced those sanctions at all. Last year, China took more than 90% of Iran's exports of crude oil.
You have also been very vocal in highlighting China's growing presence in Africa and Latin America, where they seem to be systematically buying up access to the world's minerals. We got about a minute here, and then we'll come back on the other side. But the materials you need to build chips, so many vital minerals that are required, they seem to be getting a lock on that, a monopoly on it. Hard to believe that this country already has most of our most important pharmaceutical products made in China. When we come back, Gordon Chang, a recognized expert on China and U.S.-China relations, will join us, and we will talk more about the nation that I think is the greatest danger to America. That would be the People's Republic of China. Folks, this is the Roger Stone Show. Don't go away, because we'll be right back.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back, folks, with Gordon Chang, widely recognized as one of the foremost experts and analysts when it comes to China and U.S.-China relations. Gordon, you've got a new book. I've ordered it, but it hasn't arrived yet. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. America's foreign policy elites, their policymakers, their presidents and other leaders, they do not understand China's fundamental assault on our country. They think we're at peace. The Chinese are waging their brand of war. They call it unrestricted warfare. They actually declared a, quote, people's war on us, which in their way of thinking is a, quote, total war. So although China's a far weaker society than ours, they could actually take us down because we're not defending ourselves.
Well, they seem to have infiltrated every strata of American life, and of course they use money to do it. So some of our most famous companies and brands now owned by the Chinese. They've thoroughly infiltrated academia, giving a huge amount of money to, Delaware State University, the University of Pennsylvania. Their connections to the Biden family, to me, seem deeply troubling. I don't know if our current president, owes the Chinese. What do you think?
Well, certainly it's indisputable. The Chinese Communist state has funneled millions of dollars into the Biden family. It was interesting, about a year ago, the legal team for Hunter Biden said that the Chinese company paid the family all this money as, quote, good faith seed funds. Well, that's essentially an admission of corruption, Roger, because nobody would pay millions of dollars as good faith seed funds in those circumstances. Also, the other thing I'm worried about is China blackmailing President Biden, because we know that Hunter Biden was on Chinese soil at a time where Hunter said he was in a very difficult period. And if the Ministry of State Security has any sort of evidence of Hunter Biden's compromising activities, well, they could use that to coerce Joe Biden himself. Also, Joe Biden himself the Chinese may not have to blackmail him because Biden himself may be worried about what the Chinese have and therefore, acts in ways which don't defend us because he is worried about offending Xi Jinping.
It seems very strange that the House Republicans launched an investigation into this, have documentation of these massive Chinese payments, but they never actually vote articles of impeachment after months and months and months of investigation. Took Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats a full 7 days to vote articles of impeachment against Donald Trump, and that was over a phone call to Ukraine that, in fact, was not only not improper, but seeking the truth about the activities of the Bidens in Ukraine. Overall, what would you say about the current stability in China? We touched on this in the beginning, but there seem to be cracks in Xi Jinping's leadership. I wonder how stable things are and whether we could get an even more hardline regime.
Yeah, there are certain signs of instability, and it's not only among the civilian ranks at the top of the Communist Party. It's also in the Chinese military, which, by the way, reports to the Communist Party. In the Rocket Force, which is the branch of the Chinese military that controls almost all of the country's nuclear weapons, there have been purge after purge starting in the second half of last year. We're also seeing signs in other branches of the military of problems. So this is a country that is volatile, and it is a country that I don't think is that stable at this point. And as I mentioned before, China's belligerent activity on its periphery, I think, is being driven primarily by problems at home. And it doesn't help that the Biden administration's responses to China have been weak and feeble and unimpressive.
It is extraordinarily interesting. What do you think the odds are that the Chinese move on Taiwan at this point?
I think Taiwan is, certainly Xi Jinping has staked his personal credibility on annexing Taiwan, but Taiwan is too hard of a military target. What we are seeing is a lot of huffing and puffing with regard to Taiwan. The one thing that China might do, and this comes from senior Taiwanese officials, is that they're expecting China to impose a quarantine on the island, which is not an act of war, but could very well lead to a war. We're also seeing very belligerent activity with regard to the Philippines and the South China Sea, and I think that that's a more dangerous place right now than Taiwan. And they have Chinese troops deep into Indian-controlled territory, and so that is another flashpoint.
Yeah, there's a fundamental difference between the United States and China. In the United States, you can always find a party, but in China, the party finds you. It is amazing to me also that it seems to be one of the great accomplishments of the Harris-Biden foreign policy is to drive the Russians and the Chinese, who are not traditional allies, despite their both having been communists. They're certainly both still totalitarian states. They're not natural allies. They have a long common border and a long history of distrust between them. President Richard Nixon very skillfully played the Chinese off against the Russians. It amazes me that people criticize Nixon for bringing China in out of the cold, not recognizing that at the time they were a dirt-poor agrarian society. They had no technology. They were not a danger to the United States in any way. There was no way for President Nixon to see that the Bush administration 30 years later would give China most favored nation trading status, and the Clintons would actually sell them some of our most important military secrets, including missile targeting technology, in return for illegal campaign contributions, which is what Bill Clinton really should have gone down for. All right, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Our thanks to Gordon Chang for joining us today to talk about the situation regarding China, specifically Vice Presidential candidate Tim Walz. Coming up next, the actress Drea De Matteo. You know her from The Sopranos and as well as Desperate Housewives, The Sons of Anarchy. She'll be along next, so folks, don't touch that dial, because right here at The Roger Stone Show, we'll be right back.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
If you're just tuning in, this is The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. Joining me now, I almost have to pinch myself, one of my favorite actresses, Drea De Matteo. You know her from, of course, The Sopranos, The Desperate Housewives, Sons of Anarchy, and so much more. She's a New Yorker. She also is a designer. She has her own streetwear line, Ultra Free, and she has a line of jewelry coming up. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but Drea De Matteo, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Hey, Roger. Thanks for having me.
You have had an amazing career, and of course, I'm half Italian myself. I'm half Hungarian, half Italian. I'm Italian from the waist down. And I, of course, loved The Sopranos because I saw so many of my own relatives in there. If you remember the character who played Tony's mother. Well, that was my mother. Tough, suspicious, loyal, deeply religious, and very strong-willed. It was, having grown up in that New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, I was born in the Norwalk Hospital and grew up in the New York suburbs. I saw so much of the culture that I grew up with. You've had really iconic roles, Sopranos, Sons of Anarchy, and so on. Do you feel like those kind of gritty world of crime situations reflect the current political undercurrents of Hollywood and America today?
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, David Chase was just doing an interview, and he was talking about how The Sopranos was really a reflection on the decline of American civilization back then. And I never knew that. I was young when we did the show. I wasn't focused on the decline of anything except, my bank account at that time. But it's interesting to think about that through that lens. And I had done a podcast on it a while back, too. And I that's really the way I looked at it. I looked at it as a way of sort of like a microcosm for what was happening in the world at large. And that was right around 9/11, too. So that happened while we were shooting. And, man, if he was psychic in that, because that would really be the beginning of our freedoms just completely visibly being gone. If you were paying close enough attention and not believing the hype on everything. So, yes, I do think that these shows are – I don't think that this was one of the Pentagon TV shows, but I do think that that it really does reflect. And now that we're in this society with a government that behaves like a mafia in a way that it's undeniable now. I mean, I'm sure it's always sort of acted that way. And that's why the Constitution was put in place. But, even the mafia has better morals than what this government is doing at this point, in my opinion.
Absolutely true. Of course, I was shocked to find out how many people didn't know what gabagool was. I had to explain. I had to explain that to them. It's very dangerous to be in the entertainment business and have strong political opinions that are not politically correct. I had a very famous actor who played me in a movie, and he studied a lot of video footage of me, and he came to where I live in South Florida, wanted to meet me in person. He was a very nice guy. I think our politics were aligned, but he said, could we please eat at a place where we won't be seen together? And I thought that was kind of strange, but I said, sure. And he explained very candidly, look, I love Trump. I love America. I think the country's slipping badly. But if that were known in Hollywood, I'd be out of work pretty darn fast. My good friend, Robert Davi, who's a great fellow and a great patriot and an unbelievable singer, has told me the same. So when you delve into the political, you were a supporter of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is a rebel in his own right, someone I admire very much, he's not a close friend, but he's an acquaintance. And I now think this alliance that he's formed with Donald Trump may be our last best chance to save the country. No, they're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But they do understand that the current regime threatens all of our constitutional liberties, the most vital one, of course, being free speech, because if we can't talk to each other, if we are subjected to censorship on all platforms, well, we can't solve any of our problems. You made the jump from Kennedy to Trump. How do you see it?
I mean, yes, it is definitely a scary place to be. I got pushed into it. I never would have just taken a stance politically in my life. I actually could not stand to hear actors get on their soapboxes and preach politics. It was the most annoying thing I'd ever heard in my life when it was happening in the world. I was like, just, shut up and act and do your job and entertain people. I understood it from the music industry more, especially because I grew up after the whole hippie 70s movement, whether that was a some government psyop or not at the time, whatever, it still made the best music of all time, and we still relate to that. So the arts were always so involved in protest art and in civil, with any sort of anti-establishment vibes. When the mandates happened, when the vaccine mandates happened, I always consider myself sort of a hippie, and so when that happened, I was like, hold on a minute, my body, my choice. Like, what happened to these ideas? So that's sort of how I got pushed into it. And then I had to do certain things to save my home. I went into foreclosure because I couldn't act anymore. And I wasn't really ever a career actor. I know I did a lot of great shows, but it never really interested me the way it would interest other actors to just be, ahead of the game. I literally took a job to support my family, and then I would not work for a while just so I could be with my kids because I'm a single mom. But when the mandates happened, I became extremely scared. I saw what was happening in Canada. I saw the way Trudeau was treating the men in the trucker convoy for speaking out. I saw what happened to all the frontline workers. And how they went from heroes to zeros overnight, and just the nature of the entire country. Not only did they orchestrate a complete shutdown of an entire world, but then all of my fellow just citizens fell in line with everything they were putting out over the television, and that really struck me and really freaked me out, that even a citizen could be okay with a firefighter or a nurse getting fired over these mandates. I was like, how are you okay with this? Why aren't you protesting your brothers and sisters' livelihoods and losing their jobs? This is becoming authoritarian. This is the dictatorship that you were blaming on Trump. And this is happening right here with Biden calling this the winter of death. So I knew in that moment, and I was petrified. I wasn't going to speak out. I was afraid that my bank accounts would be tapped like Trudeau was doing for the truckers. So I was quiet until it came out that because I started an OnlyFans fan page, which is really what it is. It's like an Adriana Lacerpa fan page. I had to do that to just save my home.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Drea De Matteo, one of my favorite actresses, and we'll be right back.
This is The Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
Presented by Colonial Metals Group.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. We're talking to Emmy Award-winning actress Drea De Matteo, a proud daughter of Queens, New York. She has you know her, of course, from The Sopranos, Desperate Housewives, Son of Anarchy, and far more. I have to ask you, what was it like working with James Gandolfini?
Oh, man, he was the greatest. There's a documentary that's out right now about David Chase's life, and they did a really crappy portrayal of who Jim was in that documentary. A lot of us were unhappy about it because they sort of painted him out to be just like Tony Soprano. And he was the complete opposite of Tony Soprano, but he was summoned to play, a beast on TV, a beast that you would still love. In real life, this was the most generous man, a big jokester, too, fun to have on set, and not only fun, but to watch the man act and get into that character was incredible. But the thing that stands out the most was his generosity and he would probably be very annoyed about the injustices in the world right now because he didn't like the injustices within the actual corporation of HBO and when they didn't want to pay us for DVD sales. He went and called each of us into his trailer and gave each of us a check for $30,000 for DVD sales because he felt terrible that he was the only one they graced with that. So he was always just taking care of everybody. So he was fantastic.
Yeah, he reminded me very much of my own Uncle Angelo, so I could identify with it. At least the character he played, I should say. Unless you've grown up in that New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area and you're from an Italian-American family, it's for many people, this was kind of their first, being first subjected to it. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, I'm a proud member of the Italian-American Civil Rights League, which you can find at the IARCL.org. It's a nonprofit organization where we work to preserve Italian-American heritage and culture and the important contributions made to this country by Italian-Americans. It's totally volunteer. Nobody gets paid. But we have our first annual awards ceremony coming up right there in Little Italy. I think it'll be at Cafe Palermo, actually, in Little Italy, coming up in December. Drea, I'm going to invite you. I think you would enjoy it.
That's awesome. My mom used to. My mom founded with I think it was Matilda Cuomo and a bunch of other people, but the National Organization of Italian American Women. And they were sending girls to college. But, there were a lot of Italian organizations that were protesting us, and they literally picket in front of HBO. And I became the most outspoken one against that because I felt that the Italians that were so insecure about their own heritage were the ones protesting that we were telling a mafia story. Because I was like, why would you want to tell a story about a bunch of Italian doctors that live a straight-laced life? That's not fun. You want to see the subcultures. And, every nationality has their subculture. So let's go there. It's more interesting. And also it was such an artistic it was such an incredible piece of art. And to not appreciate Italians for creating yet another multi-layered piece of art, I thought was very short-sighted on the protesters' part, that they couldn't take that as like a notch in their belt, that their people created something beautiful like that.
Well, we've seen this great tendency to take down the statues of Christopher Columbus. What happened outside the Minnesota Capitol, Tim Walz refused to defend the statue. Then once it was destroyed by terrorists, he refused to replace it. And he basically justified their illegal act. They talked about moving the statue in New York City. The statue of Mayor Frank Rizzo, no longer in front of the Philadelphia City Hall. It's been put in storage. It's a willful attempt to destroy our heritage. It's part of a larger scheme to destroy who we are and where we came from. One really cool thing that I saw in your bio, which is really shows what a small world. You once owned a rock and roll vintage clothing store in the East Village, which is called Filth Market, for several years. I actually went there once. I was actually in your store. I'm a clothes horse. Everybody knows it, but sometimes the greatest pieces are vintage, and who can afford to pay retail anyway? You could go to the flagship Polo store at 72nd and Madison, but it's great window shopping. Nothing in there I can't afford anymore. But as you know, you could, I'm a great, I shop Etsy.com. I shop Poshmark because I'm a clothes horse and I admit it. And some of the best stuff can be found at the lowest prices imaginable. Most of it, as they say, gently used. You have a clothing line, Ultra Free, which is at ultrafree.co. That's not ultrafree.com. That's ultrafree.co. And you have a jewelry line coming up. Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, I never thought that you were going to tell me that you had been inside our store when we were kids. That's amazing. Okay, so ultrafree.co was born out of complete frustration with the government. I mean, that there's no other. It's a streetwear line too, but it has tons of political statements on it. They're all kind of campy. They're definitely a little more on the masculine side, but the girls buy them and cut the necks off and wear them the way they want to wear them. And it's sort of it's the We the People line. This is for we the people. Like, we make jokes like, get your pre-apocalypse gear here. This way they know what team you're on, and you're on team We the People, basically. Because when all hell breaks loose, and God forbid we're in the middle of a civil war, a world war, all of these things, get your ultra-free tea so that people know where you stand, and you stand for each other, type of thing. And then the jewelry is brand new for us. They are AKs, and they're guns. There's guns and nameplates right now. As my legacy on The Sopranos, I always wore nameplates, and the nameplates are called the Tombstone Collection. The chicks like the nameplates. You can put your name on it, or you can get ultra free on it. They're personalized, and you have little protection charms that go on the side of them, like a cross or another gun. And the guns are called the Protection Collection. And because I was in The Sopranos, and my ex's name is Shooter Jennings, I always wore these guns around my neck. People would give me little tiny revolvers and bullet earrings and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sort of just bringing to life all the jewelry that I've always worn. But, of course, people have problems with these things now because you can't talk about guns. I mean, there was a band called Guns N' Roses, in case people forgot, Sex Pistols, the Velvet Revolver. But now if you even, people used to love having guns and skulls on their shirts, and I don't understand. That was the thing of liberals. And now the liberals freak out if that's what you're wearing. And I'm still a liberal. So I'm just like, well, you guys need to stop clutching your pearls and start clutching your guns, because this is a different society we're living in right now. So yeah, the guns in the necklaces they're super cool. They're big, long, hanging guns. There's all different. You have to go look at them, but that's the Protection Collection. And we also just don't believe in taking away our guns. So there's that. And that's coming from a hippie. That's coming from a real hippie. I'm like, if the government has guns, then we're having guns. If criminals have guns, we're having guns. And when all of my friends are like, but what about school shooters? I was like, what's going to stop a school shooter? Do you think your mind control is going to stop that school shooter? They're already under some sort of control. The only thing that's going to stop them is another gun. So
it's realism. When I was growing up, I was much younger. I wanted to be an actor. My parents thought that was ridiculous. They wanted me to be an electrician or a plumber or a wallboard man because, as my mom said, those guys make good money. And then I read a book, The Conscience of a Conservative by Barry Goldwater, and I decided I wanted to be in politics. And I figured out that, politics was show business for ugly people. And this is not the case in your regard. I salute you for having the courage to enter the arena. Your support of Robert Kennedy is admirable. Your decision to now join him in the Liberty League and support Donald Trump is equally. I know it will make your entertainment career more difficult, so we salute you for your patriotism, for your courage. And lastly, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Thanks for having me, Roger.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, your genial host, and yes, this is The Roger Stone Show right here at 77 WABC, the biggest, most powerful, most influential, and most entertaining AM radio station in the United States. We are indeed the crown jewel of AM radio. Well, folks, they're at it again. A James O'Keefe leftist wannabe by the name of Lauren Windsor has slimed me again. You may remember last time when I was speaking at a Catholic event at Mar-a-Lago, and I said in response to a question that I thought it was vitally important on election night that the Republicans have the phone number for a judge. Now, what I meant by that is that every federal district, when the court closes at the end of the day, one federal judge is designated as the duty judge because someone may have to file an emergency motion with the court. These usually pertain to medical issues, but in 2020, when observers of the vote count in Detroit, Michigan, and in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania were physically removed from the count centers and were told that the counting would be shut down when the counting continued, which is when I believe hundreds of thousands of paper ballots were dumped. Well, nobody had the judge's number. Headline in the New Republic: Stone says Trump has judges in his pocket. Not what I said. Well, she's back with another, in my opinion, illegally recorded video. In this case, I was giving a speech to the young Republicans in Jacksonville, Florida, and I correctly said that Republicans would launch a major effort to get as many as 1 million dead voters, voters who have moved out of state, or voters who, when mailed by the Board of Elections, those mailings come back addressee unknown, removed from the rolls. How many such voters are there? Well, in Texas, there are 1,082,445 people on the voter rolls who cannot be found by mail. In Florida, that number was 385,622. In Georgia was 247,775. In North Carolina, it's 152,533. No one is being disenfranchised. No one who is a legally qualified voter should be removed from the rolls. And that's, of course, not what I said. But this is the distortion business. Now, lovely Lauren goes to her friend Nikki over at Rolling Stone, and the next thing you know, Raw Story and the Daily Beast. It's the same little network of fake news degenerates, and they foment an atmosphere of hatred. That's what scares me. I don't think my family is safe. I'm not going to tell you about the incidents that we've had, but it's not surprising. Joe Biden said that it was time that someone put a bullseye on Donald Trump. Trust fund baby Congressman Dan Goldman said that Donald Trump should be eliminated. It was David Plouffe, who's running Kamala Harris's campaign, said that Trump should be terminated. So it's not surprising. It's about clickbait, folks. If you attack Roger Stone, every liberal's favorite villain, you'll make money when they click on these completely fraudulent stories. Yes, people who are not legitimate voters should be removed from the ballot. It's a perfectly legal procedure. You present the bad addresses to the Board of Elections, as they have done here in Florida. And of the 67 counties, I believe that people who are not real, who could not be found, were removed from the rolls. Who could object to that other than somebody who wants to put in a mail-in application or vote in the stead of another? The People's Audit, run by Chris Jersky, has done an amazing job of this effort to take and clean the voter rolls so that they have integrity. It's not illegal. It's not improper. It's politics. The Republicans should have done it in 2020, but they didn't. There is, of course, a poll out yesterday from President Donald Trump's pollsters. Tony Fabrizio, another proud son of Queens. I've known Tony Fabrizio since he was 18 and I was 24, and we worked on a house race together on Long Island. He is, to my mind, the toughest, most brilliant survey research analyst in the business. Tony never sugarcoats it. He tells you what the situation is, not what he wants it to be. And he's now showing Trump leading in every swing state, albeit very narrowly. Let's go through this. Arizona, he is showing Trump at 49, Harris at 46, still 5% undecided. In Georgia, Trump leading with 50 over Harris with 45. It's a 5-point lead, significant. Again, only 5% undecided. In Michigan, skin tight. Trump now pulling into the lead, 49 to 48 for Kamala Harris. Particularly low undecided there, 3%. In Nevada, Trump at 50, Harris at 47. Again, the undecided at 3. Trump's proposal to end the tax on tips is particularly brilliant. The culinary union there in Nevada has been the backbone of the Harry Reid Democrat operation, but my sister works as a cocktail waitress. She's a member of the union. She tells me that none of the women working on her shift are voting for Kamala Harris. I think Trump has broken through in the Silver State. North Carolina, now Trump leading 48-47 with 5% undecided. Serious question remains about how the folks who live in Western North Carolina are going to vote. There's 100 counties in North Carolina, and they have effectively a hurricane in 29. Of those 29, 27 are ruby red counties where Donald Trump has to get margin. Only one county, Buncombe, which is where Asheville is, adversely affected. I'm not sure how you have mail-in ballots if your mailbox and your entire home has been blown away. I'm not sure how you have a polling place when there is no electricity. These are questions that have to be sorted out. Pennsylvania, that's the big enchilada. Trump now leading 49-48 with 3% undecided. And Wisconsin, where Harris previously led, Trump now leading 49-48 with 3 undecided. These numbers, while I'd rather be up than down, I think we have to recognize that this is going to be an incredibly close race. So close that I think they are manipulating the weather. Is that a crazy idea? Joe Biden says it's a crazy idea, but well, Lyndon Johnson seems that he contradicted him. Listen to this.
Now the claims are getting even more bizarre. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman of Georgia, is now saying the federal government is literally controlling the weather. We're controlling the weather. It's beyond ridiculous.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. The technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations.
When you hear the name Bill Gates, you probably think Microsoft founder, but now the billionaire may be known as the hurricane tamer. Gates is listed as one of 13 inventors on a patent filed for hurricane prevention methods.
You told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own, that not only does it exist, that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before we turn to
questions. Yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the senator's own statement. So, yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
How does this hurricane's path differ from others that we've seen? I've already had a lot of people call me from the Asheville area, talk specifically about the horrendous damage, and many of them pointed out that that is not Hurricane Alley per se. It's not an area that normally attracts storms. Can you help us understand this?
Well, the bottom line is it was directed there, as the transmission recordings clearly show. They kept that moisture corralled there to deluge in the same location. So again, these are patented technologies, and the fact that we have the entire so-called meteorological community denying that this is going on to protect their paychecks and pensions is absolutely criminal at this point. We know we have private defense contractors that are neck deep in the patents that manipulate these storms, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. We know those two in particular do the weather modeling for the nation's weather and National Weather Service.
So there you have it, President Lyndon Johnson. That was followed by former CIA Director John Brennan, and then, of course, Bill Gates. Then my good friend, Colonel Douglas McGregor, questioning an expert. No, folks, they do have the technology to manipulate the weather. They've had it since the 50s. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not some crazy idea. Other thing that caught my attention this week is that Apple, a company that in the past refused to violate the private rights of the San Bernardino mass shooting terrorist, but very willfully turned over all my iCloud records during the Mueller investigation, is now refusing to turn over the Apple records for the man who was accused of shooting President Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, Thomas Matthew Crooks. It was in 2015 that Apple defended the privacy of a San Bernardino terrorist who was killed, but not before he injured dozens of others in a mass shooting, killed and injured many others. The company refused to turn over his Apple records. But they have no problem turning mine over to Robert Mueller when I was charged. You know what they found in there? Absolutely nothing whatsoever. So Apple protects mass shooters. Apple protects a would-be assassin, but Apple will not protect Roger Stone. Seems like a two-tiered system, if you ask me. You're going to want to stick with us here on the Roger Stone Show because we have a very special guest coming up. That's right. The ghost of President Richard Milhous Nixon, our 37th president, is going to join us today on the Roger Stone Show. You're not going to want to miss that, folks, so we'll be right back.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
With an increasingly competitive presidential race, it's hard for me to believe that anyone would vote for Kamala Harris, but the polls show the race to be tight. If you're a supporter of Donald Trump, as I admittedly am, it is vitally important that no one think this is in the bag or going to be a landslide. I know my colleague Dick Morris here at 77 WABC says he sees a Reagan-like landslide. From his mouth to God's ear, but she's obviously shifted strategies here because previously she would do no one-on-one interviews. She would do no press conferences. That was out of the question. Now she's begun doing interviews, but they're pretty disastrous. Let's listen to her on 60 Minutes.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
So what you heard there, folks, was an edited version of Kamala Harris's remarks. This is extraordinary. The Trump campaign has called on 60 Minutes to release the entire unedited transcript and video. They have stoutly resisted that. Reminds me when Leslie Stahl was interviewing President Donald Trump, and when Trump said they spied on my campaign, she continued to insist that wasn't true. She was very pompous about it. We're 60 Minutes. We can't air anything we can't prove. Well, this has been proven without any doubt. We're still waiting for Leslie's apology, which I have a feeling will not be forthcoming. It's interesting in these round of interviews, what we are not seeing. We don't see Kamala talking about her support for ending cash bail for violent criminals. We never see her mentioning her raising money for the rioters in the Antifa BLM riots that burned of America. We never hear any discussion of her tie-breaking vote for the so-called American Rescue Plan, which really is the spending plan that fueled our current inflation. No mention of Kamala's support for defunding the police. No mention of her comparing our current policing to slavery. She continued to insist that Bidenomics is working. Today, we eviscerated the latest jobs numbers. They're manipulated and phony, and it is undeniable that the current inflation rate is destroying the buying power of the dollar. Kamala Harris, of course, who also supports U.S. taxpayers paying for 100% of the health care of every person who's in the country illegally. That could be as many as 20 million people. She also said she supports closing down the immigration detention centers at our border, which would literally free thousands of criminals into our neighborhoods. She also says we need to start from scratch with ICE. She wants to abolish it. She's often compared ICE officers, those are the valiant men and women who attempt to protect our border, to the Ku Klux Klan. She supports reparations, which is proposed in California, which is, the idea of paying people who are not slaves by people who did not hold slaves. Doesn't make much sense to me, but that's her plan. What you're going to see here is this continued psyop of a campaign. It's interesting. I saw that one of her recent rallies, somebody did a GPS analysis and found that of the 4,000 some odd people who were at the rally, almost 3,000 of them had been at the previous rally in a different state. So I guess she's using the rent a crowd system. I think they juiced these polls earlier. But the big news here, I think, is that Donald Trump is clearly making a play for New York, headed to Madison Square Garden on October 27th. He's well aware of the spillover into northern New Jersey, which also I believe is in play, eastern Pennsylvania, which is crucial, and of course Connecticut, which is pretty blue. But all my cousins out there in Connecticut listening to the show this Sunday, special shout out to you. Proud to be part of the 77 WABC family. Folks, if you have a minute, go to the App Store and download the 77 WABC app so you don't miss any of the great entertainment or talk that we offer here at the absolute gem of AM radio, the most powerful, influential, and entertaining AM radio station in the United States. Don't go away because, well, I have the ghost of President Richard Nixon, our 37th president, going to join us momentarily right here on the Stone Zone. Keep right there on the dial, or of course you can always hear us at WABCradio.com. Any place in the country. We're streaming live in, I think it's 163 counties now around the globe. Our online audience is growing every Sunday. So if you're not in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area where I grew up, you can find us at 770 on the AM dial. But if you're elsewhere in the country, you can hear us at WABCradio.com. I'm Roger Stone. It's the Roger Stone Show on this beautiful Sunday, and we'll be right back with Richard Milhouse Nixon.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will now introduce our honored guest, the 37th President of the United States, Richard Milhouse Nixon. I should say the ghost of Richard Nixon joins us today on the Roger Stone Show. Mr. President, welcome to the show.
My fellow Americans, I have a motto, and that motto was simply this: always be kind, be helpful. Never say anything bad about a man until you've walked a mile in his shoes. By then, you'll be a mile away. You'll have his shoes. So then I guess you can say any damn thing you want.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for joining us today. If you knew now what you knew then, would you have resigned?
I would never have resigned. Watergate was just ridiculous. If Watergate happened today, it would be over in about a day.
Folks, we got to let you in on the joke here. Of course, our guest is the world-famous international entertainer and impressionist Rich Little, a man who I have followed for many years. And I told earlier, Rich, your impression of President Nixon, with whom I spent a lot of time, well, you had David Fry beat every day of the week. I thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm still alive.
Makes
and
two
I'm still performing. Still performing after all these years. I was 5 years at the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas, and they just blew it up 2 days ago. I'm glad I wasn't performing at the time.
Thank goodness for that. The great thing, of course, about your career is that you have great versatility. You can do impressions of President John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, who's was 100 years old, God bless him, Ronald Reagan. Reagan once said that you did Reagan better than Reagan did Reagan.
That's right.
Give us a little Reagan.
He said to me, Rich, I think you do me better than I do. And I think when I pass away, I hope they bury you.
That's great. As I told you, I had a friend who did this killer impression of Strom Thurmond. He couldn't find work anyplace. And then we talked about Vaughn Meader. Vaughn Meader was a gifted impressionist who did John F. Kennedy, had a couple of really, really big record albums, making fun in a good-natured way with the Kennedy family. And of course, his career
family rides again.
Yeah. His career died the day Jack Kennedy was murdered. It was a great tragedy.
Right.
Great tragedy.
That's right. Yeah, his career was over the day he was killed. I mean, that was the end of him. I worked with him on one album, and I didn't get to know him very well, but it was interesting. He was so good at doing Kennedy that if I did my impression of Kennedy, it got a fair reaction. But if I did my impression of Vaughn Meader doing Kennedy, that got a bigger reaction.
It's interesting. One of the keys to this, of course, is you do a killer impression of President Nixon, and some people do it kind of over the top. Others kind of do it, in a conversational tone. But I really think you've got it down. When you perform, and you're still actively performing, which is great. We're still both around. What's the most common request? What do people want? Who do people want to hear you do?
Well, if you're an older person, and know the people I'm imitating, young people have no idea who I'm doing. But if you're an older person like I am, you probably like my impression of Johnny Carson or Ronald Reagan or Nixon or Jimmy Stewart. Those are probably the most popular of all the voices I've done.
But you do Barack Obama. You do both.
No, I don't do Barack Obama.
Oh,
I don't do Barack Obama, but that's interesting. Barack Obama doesn't even do himself.
Good point. Both Bushes, I'm told.
What?
Both of the Bushes, George W. and George H.W. Bush. And, of course, Joe Biden. Do you do Joe Biden?
I do Joe Biden, and it gets a pretty big reaction. And I go off stage eating an ice cream cone and then drag a deck chair across the stage, eating my ice cream cone.
Oh, I love it. Can I coax you to give us a little bit of Joe Biden?
Okay, Joe Biden. Let me think. My name is oh God. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, dear Joe Biden. Joe Biden.
Very.
And
very
I'm the head honcho, the jumbo jelly bean, the big cheese. And I'd like to tell you about my accomplishments as president. Have you got a minute?
They're very good.
I've done the work of 8 people in my career. 8 people: grumpy, dopey, sleepy, bashful, and happy. And my son Hunter was Snow White.
Very good. You've got a spate of pretty talented impressionists who do Donald Trump. Sean Farash, who's been on this show, and Jason Scoop and others. Trump has such distinctive speech patterns. Is he tough to do?
Well, there's 2 Donald Trumps, really. You can imitate him at a rally where he's speaking out, or you can imitate him when he's doing an interview, which is an entirely different sound. He's it's tough to do him. I would think that Barack Obama, though, was the hardest of any impersonator to do. And I never really got him down, but I don't really care.
You probably you do all these great show business luminaries. You mentioned Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne, Humphrey Bogart. You're right. It is. Look, kids who go to school today don't even know who Abraham Lincoln was. We don't teach history. We don't teach history in school anymore. We don't teach anything other than that which is politically correct. But, I've heard you do Jack Nicholson. It's amazing.
Well, Jack Nicholson was a great voice to do. Here's Johnny.
Now,
but it's interesting. Young people, in my audience, have no idea who I'm doing. They have to rely on the humor because young people today have no idea who Jimmy Stewart is or John Wayne or Humphrey Bogart. They have no idea, and it's kind of sad in a way because those were the great stars, of the past, and a lot of young people are just not interested. It's too bad. So my act really appeals to older people who remember that generation.
You've had an amazing career. I could go through your entire bio here, but we only have a half-hour segment. You're very active in Gary Sinise's foundation, other causes to support our working men and women in the military, which is really, I think, admirable. Now, do you live in Las Vegas at this point?
I live in Las Vegas. It's a wonderful little city too, if they ever get it finished. But I'm originally Canadian. I come from Canada, and I thought if the Liberals get back into power, I may have to move back to Canada. And then somebody said to me, "Well, wait a minute, you don't want to go back to Canada. They've got Trudeau up there." And I said, "Oh, that's kind of depressing." So I don't know where I'll go. Maybe I'll go to an island somewhere. But I think if the Liberals get back in, I think I'm going to split because this country will go down the drain.
I agree.
I'm a big supporter of Donald Trump. Huge supporter of Donald Trump.
Look, I think
I think he's sharp. I think he's caring. I think he's compassionate, and he has a great sense of humor, and he loves this country. And he survived 2 assassination attempts because I think God has a plan for him, and that plan is to become president again and save this country.
I agree with that analysis. Interestingly enough, a substantial number of Christian prophets that I've become friends with insist that he would serve 2 terms, but they point out that they never said 2 consecutive terms. We're looking at a very, very close election. Surprisingly
I don't really
close.
believe that. Do you really believe that? I don't believe it's close. I can't believe that many people would vote for Kamala Harris. I mean, the most unpopular vice president of all time wants to become president? I mean, is this realistic at all?
Well,
I don't get it.
You may be right. One thing is absolutely true, and that is that Trump always underpolls in these public polls because, let's face it, there are many, many Americans who are not going to tell a stranger on the phone or over the internet how they're going to vote because they don't want to be harassed. They don't want to be targeted. They don't want to be named on some list. So we've seen this phenomena before where Trump gets 2 to 3% of the vote more than the polls are showing. But we also cannot underestimate the still substantial power of the mainstream media. No, they don't have a monopoly like they once did, but they're still very, very influential. And let's face it, there's a lot of stupid people out there who believe what they see. Now, most of the people watching CNN are doing so in an airport. I don't get my news from CNN because I don't eat out of the toilet. But there's a lot of folks who watch MSNBC or watch CNN and actually believe what they dish up. And censorship on the internet still far broader and more resilient than folks think. I I'm very happy that Elon Musk bought Twitter, turned it over to X. It's not perfect, but it is a great platform. Rumble's also a great platform for free speech because right now, Rich, to tell you the truth, I'm banned for life on Facebook. I'm banned for life on Instagram. I'm banned for life on TikTok. Absolutely. I'm the most dangerous. I'm the most dangerous person in the world. So, yeah, you can.
But you're so lovable, though.
Well, that's what my wife says, anyway.
And you've got a great sense of humor. You've got a great sense of humor. I love that kitten joke that you told Jerry, my business manager. That's a funny joke.
Too bad we can't.
About the kittens? The blind kittens?
Yeah, it
funny
is.
Joke.
It is a great joke. What Richard?
You know, it's interesting when you think of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. There's very little humor when they talk. You know, and it's a shame, really. If they said something funny, their numbers would go up. Because I'm thinking back when Ronald Reagan said about Mondale, you know, his youth and inexperience, his numbers went up about 17 points by making that comment. And if the presidential hopefuls had more humor, I think it would help them a lot. But they don't seem to. They don't. I mean. Donald Trump came out, at Butler when he said, as I was saying, which was cute, you know. But I think that Donald Trump, when he went back to Butler, should have walked out on the stage and said, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears.
People don't recognize, of course, that in that entire horrific sequence of events, that the president, first he goes down, then he's surrounded by this scrum of Secret Service agents. He iconically puts his fist in the air and yells, fight, fight, to show the crowd that he hasn't been killed. He doesn't know at that point whether there's still an active shooter. That's an extraordinary act of courage. But there are people, many of them on the internet, who insist to this day that there was no attempt on his life. The whole thing was a psyop. The whole thing was staged. He had some capsule that he bit that which is where the fake blood. I mean, this. I call them assassination deniers. It's dangerous and it's laughable, except for many of them, blame me. Oh, Roger Stone organized this. Look.
Well, who is that gentleman up on the roof? Who is that walking around? Who are we supposed to believe that was? Some technician up there or something? I don't know.
Yeah, it's an absurdity. And in the same breath, as I said a little earlier, the Apple tells us we can't open that guy's phone. He has several encrypted apps in his phone. We can't get at that information. Believe me, they had no trouble getting into my phone. Of course, they didn't find anything. But there's a whole cottage industry of people who just believe this was orchestrated. And it's an insult to Corey Comparatori, the valiant firefighter who took one to the head, who dies shielding his wife and his...
Oh, boy. What a hero, huh?
Unbelievable. Look, people say, why did Trump go back there? He went back there, first of all, I think, to console the family. But secondarily, he went back because the media would like to pretend none of this happened. They just want to wipe it out of the public commentary and coverage. The FBI has already concluded. One guy, this guy Crooks, acting alone, must have been a nut. There's so much more to it. It's kind of like the Kennedy assassination. I don't know whether we'll ever get to the bottom of it. If you're just tuning in, folks, this is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC, the gem of AM radio. We're talking to Rich Little, the world-famous comedian and entertainer, impressionist, and we'll be right back.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, Here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. We're visiting with master mimic Rich Little, a man of over 200 voices. He continues to impress with a touring schedule throughout the United States and Canada. He famously had an 8-year residence at the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas, which they recently tore down. Rich, I'm glad you weren't in it when they tore it down. But you've been famous for skewering political figures right and left, Republicans and Democrats, for decades. And we're honored to have you today here on the show. One of my favorites.
Well, I don't mind telling people that I'm a staunch conservative. I wouldn't have done that a few years ago. It's better for a comedian to not tell you, what party he favors. But things are so bad in this country. And at my age, what are they going to do to me?
Well, it's interesting. Earlier on the show, we had the actress Drea De Matteo. She was originally a Robert Kennedy supporter. When Kennedy endorsed Trump, she endorsed Trump. She's now solidly for Trump. She recognizes the impact on her career is not going to be positive. If
I was a Hollywood movie star in my 20s, I would worry because they can blacklist you very easily. I'm like John Voight. John Voight's just too popular, and he doesn't. At his age, he doesn't care what he says. But he does care what he says, but he doesn't. He's not worried like I am. Because we got to get this country back on track again. We're a third-rate nation at the moment. Nobody abroad respects us at all. I think we're very weak. And I think if Kamala Harris got in, I shudder to think of her meeting some of these leaders from other countries. It'll be very embarrassing. Wow.
It's interesting. There is a woman, Estee Palti, who's on X, who does the most uncanny impression of Kamala Harris, including the laugh that you have ever heard. This woman has it down. But she also has the physical aspect. So she does the mannerisms and so on.
What do you think that laugh of hers is? That her nerves coming through when she laughs? Because you can hardly ever see a picture of her without laughing. I mean, it's unbelievable. She laughs at even tragedy. If her house was burning down, this woman would be in hysterics. I think that's a nervous infliction, don't you?
I agree with that. Willie Brown, who's actually a friend of mine, because of our shared love of all things sartorial, I met him when I was working for Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts, and we were considering doing an Indian gaming deal in the San Francisco area. I got a chance to meet Willie, but Willie says she's very unsure of herself. She's quite nervous, but he also says don't underestimate her, and I guess that's true because somehow she became the nominee of the Democrat Party for President of the United States without a single Democrat primary or caucus voter casting a single vote for her. So there was no we had her on 60 Minutes, and it was embarrassing. She said, "Well, I was the choice of the delegates." Yes, but the delegates voted for Joe Biden. He got 71% of the vote. 17 million people voted for him. Who voted for you, sister? The answer is no one. But they're the ones who want to go on and on and on about Trump being a threat to democracy. Look, I salute you for speaking up because it's tough for people in the entertainment industry.
Yeah. I always say to a Democrat, didn't you like it 4 years ago when you could buy groceries at a reasonable price? Gas was cheap. There were no wars. There was hardly any fentanyl coming across the border. Didn't you like that? I mean, wouldn't you want that again? And they don't have an answer to that. If you vote for Kamala Harris, what's she got to offer? Nothing.
Well, by her own admission, she says she would do nothing different than Joe Biden.
She would do nothing.
Right.
And I was thinking about Ron DeSantis the other day talking about Kamala Harris. That he didn't take her call Why should he take her call? He's talking to the president. He doesn't want to talk to the vice president. He's never talked to her about a hurricane or coming through. Never. So why would he bother talking to her? He's talking to the president. It's as simple as that.
Very well put. No, I thought Biden really undercut Kamala when he said, I'm talking to the governor directly, and he's doing a great job on hurricane relief. Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. I want to thank our guest, Rich Little.
Is Joe Piscopo coming on the show?
No, his show is right after mine. He does a show called Sundays with Sinatra. Boy, he has a set of pipes.
I love him. He's a wonderful comedian. I'm a big fan of his.
Well, he's also a great human being. He's been a friend of mine a long time, and he's got a great set of pipes too. I mean, we had a 77 WABC charity gala recently, and he sang, and man, the guy is he just blew me away. He is the very best.
He does a great Frank Sinatra. He has to hit somebody before he does it, but it's pretty good, you know.
I love it. If only Jilly Rizzo was here. All right. We have to.
Jilly Rizzo. I love Jilly Rizzo. He was great. Great guy. What a sad ending he had. Wow.
All right. We have to leave it there. Rich Little, man of 2,000 voices.
Thank you so much. And vote for Donald Trump.
There you have it, folks. Rich Little. He's graced us today. Glad to have him here on the Stone Zone. And as we said, folks, don't go away, because our mutual friend, Joe Piscopo, will be right along in just a few minutes here with Sundays with Sinatra.